PII. And we got frantic phone calls, they brought it down and everything. So we have worked with the Office that handles PII, and we're doing a couple of things. We are educating site owners, bringing it up and reminding them. We are also in our general user training, we're emphasizing the importance of what makes up PII. We're going to work with the office that handles this to do real life, knowing that stories, people remember stories. So often people don't realize that two separate pieces of information may not be PII, but you put them together and all of a sudden they are PII. So we're going to work with the office and have them give us some stories, just like our crew stories, so that people have some real life situations that they can relate to and understand what they are. And we're going to try to do some spot checks through. But with as many sites as we have now, we can't monitor it completely. We're going to have to do it through education. And the agency recognizes we'll do our best, but we may have a slip up. I'm sorry, there was a gentleman over here who got a question, and that's it. We got 15 minutes left.
It was kind of a spear up hers. It seemed that when you're talking about the sanctioned and the sanctioned storage of data and the SharePoint data, the storage of data, are they two different things? So now you have to store things in two different places?
Federal Highway does not have a centralized document management system. So some of it, when we're talking about documents of record, they may be hard copies somewhere. They may not be electronic. And that's about all I can tell you about it. That's as far as my knowledge goes. Okay. Corey, shall we move on to connections?
Sure, I'll be relatively quick about it. So already, just in kind of going back and forth here, we've brought up the fact that we've had to, in some way, shape, or form, talk with a overall department IT group, information security, information retention, discipline organizations, which are made up entirely as matrix on top of existing organizations. We showed you a crazy map with a million pins in it. All those have offices and people. There's contractors, they come and go. There's feds that they come and go. People go on detail. There's a lot of moving parts going on at any given point. This is the issue we face as a knowledge application team. If anybody's in knowledge management, is anybody in IT or HR as a knowledge management folks? We're kind of in a good place where the knowledge application team is part of the resource center, which even before all the discipline stuff was really designed to help provide services and resources across a lot of different organizational lines. It created a lot of organizational lines in doing so, but it also provides support across organizational lines. So we sort of looked at that model and thought, all right, well, we're in a little bit of a unique place. And no matter where we are, I think you can still accomplish this. What are we going to do with this? We realized that a lot of offices, they have a lot of overlapping duties. A lot of folks initiate projects that are already underway elsewhere. They eventually come to a point of conflict or contention. And there weren't any real outlets to bring together stakeholders, particularly to what we were doing, but also to related initiatives like disciplines. You may be very shocked to learn that some people aren't that concerned about some other team doing something that's going to conflict with them. It's like, well, what do we do about that? And just sort of the illustration here, we talked about the disciplines and the competencies. Well, you can have HR creating competencies, and you can have this training organization creating informal training linked to those competencies. Are they the final competencies? Are they linking to the draft competencies? And you have these folks over here creating a totally different group of training for another reason, just for some seminars that they're going to hold once. So we looked at all that and said, there has to be a better way of all of this. Just some way of approaching it from our perspective. We're a tiny team, can't really get out in front of a lot of it, but what can we do? Well, we can use some of our lessons learned. Does anybody here have a background in IT? Does anybody have a background in
Oh, wow.
Wow. All right, everybody else, you might be scared. But don't worry, I'm going to talk about databases. I know, but they're just a bunch of data. Look at the idea of databases. It's a bunch of data that's linked by some sort of key. So if you took everybody's name in here, well, that's great, we have a list of names. But if we took your name and where you work, and so you work in the same place, all right, well, now that data shares something. We can play with it. We can manipulate it. Taking that idea to an organization, we thought, well, what does CAT do?
CAT is the acronym for Knowledge
Sorry.
Application Team. We
No,
will try real hard not to use that today.
I feel. So how can we apply that? What do all these organizations, all these people doing different things have in common? For whatever reason, one way, shape, or form, they're using a service that CAT interacts with.
Okay. And so what we try to be is that hub that we have our antenna out, listening for what people need, and seeing if there's places where we can encourage collaboration and working together. Okay. Anything else?
Just, I mean, when people ask us, how do you govern everything? And we go, oh, well, we realize right away, we can't possibly govern everything, but we can help create a steering committee to help govern it. We can help create a steering committee within the disciplines to govern their own SharePoint sites. So that's where we really try to come in and help create organizations that will foster collaboration. We'll advise them, administer them, what have you. But this team doesn't necessarily need to own all that stuff.
And we even if we were large enough, we aren't the ones to own it. Going back to the story I was telling you about the coup plans and the PI, Corey and I came up with a great idea that we would have the site owners sign a memorandum of understanding that they would look on their sites for PII information, that type of thing. And the beauty of having a steering committee was that we wouldn't implement something like that without sharing it with them. Well, they pointed out many reasons why we would not want an MOU. Site owners are volunteers. If you do site owners, if you put this burden on them, will it reduce the people who want to serve in that capacity? Is this something that if there's something does slip through, are people going to be penalized in their performance review? Things that we had not considered. So it's important to have the users as part of the governance, and we have representatives from IT on there as well as from the program side. It's one of those things. Have the people on there that have the information that can help everybody make wise decisions about the system. Okay. So, one other thing that I want to bring out, we've talked a lot about SharePoint, but really the connections right now with sharing with our external environment has to do with web conferencing, because we hopefully this week we'll have permission to move forward with an external SharePoint site. But we've been saying that for 2 years now, but it really is going to happen this week. I just have a good feeling. But right now, our main way of communicating and sharing knowledge with our external transportation partners is through web conferencing or our external communities of practice that are still on Lowe's Domino. But the several things that have been of great benefit, and my point here is don't limit your thought of what knowledge sharing is based on the technology, because there are multiple ways that you can meet your business needs in sharing knowledge. And some of the examples with web conference is one of the biggest ones that's happened recently was the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act.
Mm-hmm.
Federal Highway needed to very quickly get information out to the states and the local transportation areas on how to keep records for this and that type of thing. We're talking thousands of tens of thousands of people when you start talking about the local transportation area. Within a couple of weeks, they were able to pull together a presentation, and we were able to offer web conferences to meet this need. Done in a timely manner. We had to develop training. It would have taken months. Developed in a timely manner. And most importantly, it was a consistent message. Everybody got it. A recording was made of it. The people who weren't able to attend could hear the same message. So that's, for the sake of time, I'll limit my, but there are multiple times like that where web conferencing has stepped in and allowed us to share knowledge in real time that was necessary for our business needs. Okay. Again, open it up to discussion to you. Anything to share?
One question
Yes.
real quick. I'm curious when it comes to, and I hate to keep getting back to the SharePoint, but did you find at some point that, because we're kind of in our formative phases with SharePoint trying to herd all the cats, are you finding that there's a certain level where it should be managed at? And when I say that, I mean, is it best managed at the national level, at a regional level, or at a more local level? And to where it's actually useful and you're not doing duplication of effort.
We're doing it across the agency. I'm not quite sure. I wouldn't describe it as a national level, but we're doing it across all of Federal Highway. We don't. I say that the collaboration portal is across all of Federal Highway. There is talk about setting up a development server that IT will manage to develop applications, which is not our area of expertise. And also they're looking at using SharePoint as an initial document management. So they would be two different initiatives from the federal board, but that's handled across all of Federal Highway.
I would say critically when we began, there wasn't like an email that went out to all the federal highways and said, we have a portal now, come on board. Really let it grow and see, kind of just let some people in and say, let's see what they do. This will be interesting. And grew our governance from there. So on a governance level, the site owner is really pretty critical. That's why we require them to take training and everything. They're our point of contact. And if you're a site owner, you can manage your own permissions, create subsites, that kind of thing. So you can really create a whole cluster of sites. So in some cases, it's very, headquarters office with sub-office and sub-office. A lot of cases, that's not what people identify with. They identify with this program that they work on. And it's kind of related to that program. And we say, hey, there's a site like that that's already there. So you can join them, be a sub-site, however you want to work it out, or just be different, and here's how you can link the data. So we kind of try to ignore the organization chart as much as possible, and just however people want it to evolve. And it's actually worked. Nobody would believe me when I said that years ago, and a lot of people don't believe us now. When we look at it, we go, it's actually worked very well. People have self-belief pretty well.
Yes.
Do you find that your site owners lean towards keeping their sites open and available, or do you have guidance in that area, or do you find that people say, oh, we don't want those other folks in that other discipline looking at our stuff, so...
Everything's open unless there is a business need to have limited permissions, and we do have some cases of that. I'd like to kind of, but one more question. I hate to do last question.
Sorry, real quick. You mentioned web conferencing. Do you use any other collaborative tools